Every day, people drive. Be it to work, school, or just a leisurely picnic in Manitoba, people drive at every hour of the day. To make these cars go, we need fuel. Usually our fuel comes from oil pumped out of the ground from exotic locations all over the world. However, these sources are beginning to run dry. We need fuel from newer, more renewable sources. Today, many scientists believe that biofuels can provide the boost that we need. Biofuels are like regular fuels, except they are made from biological sources such as corn, soy, and algae. If we could use these renewable sources for our energy needs, we would be much better off for mankind's goal of living sustainably. Today we're going to talk about how biofuels are impacting the world as we know it. We're going to sit down with two researchers who work in the biofuel industry to hear what biofuels are doing for us.
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Science rules.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Inertia is a property of matter.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
T minus 7 seconds.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
In the United States, over 1.5 billion bushels of corn are converted into ethanol each year. This ethanol can then be used as fuel in the cars that we drive instead of the petroleum-based fuels like gasoline that you would get at the gas station. But why corn? Let's ask an expert. Hi, Dr. Mosier.
Hello, Bill. How about we go into my office inside the factory?
Okay, great. I'm here today with Dr. Nathan Mosier of the Laboratory for Renewable Resources Engineering at Purdue. He's an expert on all things corn. So tell me, Nathan, why corn? Why not potatoes or grain or broccoli?
Well, Bill, the secret is in the starch. Corn grain contains incredibly high amounts of starch compared with other crops that you might already be familiar with. In fact, over 71% of the corn grain is made up of starch. This starch is the key ingredient in making most bioethanol. By heating the starch in water and then treating it with the right catalysts, you can convert it to the simple sugars which serve as the precursors for bioethanol. And while that's true for any biofuel crop, what makes corn special is what we're able to do with the rest of the plant.
The rest of the plant?
Right, Bill. Cellulose, lignin, protein. These are just some of what make up the other 29% of the corn grain, the non-starch portion. And they constitute nearly 60% of the corn stover.
The leaves and the stalk, right?
That's exactly right, Bill. These components would ordinarily be unusable in the bioethanol production process. But with corn, we have cellulose conversion technologies, which allow us to turn these components into bioethanol too. By cooking these compounds in a brew, teeming with microorganisms that digest the exterior surfaces of the cell walls of plants, we're able to gain access to all of the cellulose and hemicellulose inside, and to convert them into simple sugars too, just like we do with the starch inside of the corn grain. Here, let me show you how this works. Say this is your cell wall. The black borders here represent the lignin that is currently preventing us from getting to all of this potential biomatter that could be turned into bioethanol. These include things like the red, which represent our cellulose, and the blue, which represent things like our hemicellulose. Now, with our conversion technologies, what we're able to do is use certain species of fungi, like trichoderma, penicillium, or aspergillus. And what they do is, they come in and they bust up the lignin, exposing the cellulose and the hemicellulose inside. They then secrete special enzymes that they make naturally that digest all of the cellulose and hemicellulose inside and convert them into simple sugars that we can then turn into bioethanol.
Did you know that?
Only 1% of the corn grown per year is actually consumed. The rest is used for animal feed, sweetener, and industrial uses such as biofuels. The
The cost of transportation, labor, and energy accounts for 80% of the expenses of corn. That means that only 20% of the cost of corn is due to its actual production.
Now you know.
We're here today with Dr. Stuart Scott of the University of Cambridge. He's going to talk to us about using algae as a potential biofuel. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Scott.
My pleasure, Bill.
So, tell us a little bit about how algae could be used as a biofuel.
Well, I'm sure you've heard of the main sources of biofuels today. Cornstarch, oil products such as palm oil and oilseed rape. See, these sources are all competing for arable land, and this competition and shortage of land could result in a serious food shortage if there's not enough land for farmers to grow the crops they need to feed America. Second, the energy input required to get these fuels is so high that it diminishes savings in the energy you're getting out of it, and in greenhouse gas savings because the energy is so great, you're not getting as much as you could.
What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, producing oilseed rape takes 50% of the energy you would get from the fuel in the first place. That leaves only half of its energy for use by us in terms of net savings. This procedure is not cost-effective in the long run.
So what then is the advantage of algae over these fuels?
Well, first, algae has a higher rate of productivity than most land plants, and some species of algae can double their numbers in only a few hours. Second, some species of algae produce lots of triacylglycerides, or TAGs, which are important in biodiesel production. Third, algae does not require plots of land, which gives it an advantage over the very land-hungry plants that we use today.
So from what you're saying, it sounds like this algae could really be a good potential source of energy. Could you explain that a little more?
The main research going on in this field is optimizing the growth systems, which are the efficiency of algae growth and maximization of TAGs.
Can you tell us more about the TAG content?
Well, to produce biodiesel from algae, there are two main factors that have to be considered. The first is the concentration of biomass. More algae means more fuel. The second is the oil content of the cells. The more productive algae and the more energy produced means that there will probably be a lower lipid content in the cells of the algae. Now, when these algae are deprived of their nutrients, more of the carbon from photosynthesis is channeled into the TAGs. And the higher the TAGs, the better fuel and the more fuel overall you will get from the algae.
Well, thanks for being with us today, Dr. Scott. We're really glad we could get some insights into this. We're here at Celery Bog now. As you can see, there's some algae down here. This is exactly the kind of algae that Dr. Scott and I were talking about. This could be very well used as a biofuel. I'll pry some of it with the pond to show you up close with the algae stick of science. There! Not bad, huh? There are still a lot more unanswered questions out there about biofuels. Will they eventually be able to replace all petroleum-based products? Can we find a way to make them not only more affordable, but also more efficient? These kinds of questions are being answered by people all across the globe, from those growing corn and soy in arable land, to those growing algae in laboratories. Well, that's our show. Thanks for watching. If you'll excuse me now, I've got some algae to investigate. See ya!
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Science rules.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Inertia is a property of matter.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
T minus 7 seconds.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.